Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize Honorable Dante Marcoleta of Sagip Party List for his interpellation. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Dante Marcoleta of Sagip Party List is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Sponsor, good afternoon po. Mr. Speaker, the proposed 2021 national budget amounts to 4.5 trillion pesos. And as stated in the President's budget message, the main thrusts of the budget are first to contain the spread and then mitigate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, while restarting the economy to reset, rebound, and recover from the crisis. This be a correct statement?
Yes, except that it's 4.4 trillion.
And in this regard, Mr. Speaker, a set of macroeconomic assumptions used to draw up the proposed 2021 budget. For instance, in the case of the gross domestic product growth rate and its projection for this year, the DBCC, for the Development Budget Coordination Committee, adjusted the GDP growth rate target to negative 5.5%, or a range of negative 6.6 to negative 4.5%. That is still correct. This is, of course, to take into account the severe impact of COVID-19 crisis on the economy. But given the 9% contraction in the first semester, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, should the economy, or should we allow the economy to contract by lower than 2% in the second semester? May I rephrase the question? The economy should not contract by lower than 2% in the second semester to realize the target. Is it not so, Mr. Speaker?
I think as an honest analyst, can contract lower than 2%. So that makes the 5.5 a little more positive. Positive is the way, a little more foolish.
Thank you for the hesitant answer. Mr. Speaker, very recently, the Asian Development Bank, in its 2020 updated ADB outlook, this is September 2020, it forecasted that the growth of this year by the Philippines will contract by negative 7.3%. Confirm that report by the ADB, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Therefore, the Philippines will have the worst. Well, I think we can accept that the Philippines might have the worst economic performance in 2020 because, per report, Philippines is second only to Thailand, which is negative 8% in the ASEAN region. We also confirm that, Mr. Speaker.
That's correct. I just checked among the C and P.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, Moody's Investor Service revised its 2020 economic forecast for our country from 4.5% negative 7%. Will you also be able to confirm that?
Moody's is negative 9.2.
Thank you. So, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, given those confirmed economic prognosis for the country, do you think that we are still on track of the growth targets for this year as well as for next year?
Kung kaya po, kakayanin. Pero maraming bagay dapat magkaroon ng confluence. Halimbawa, kumayos natin ang transportasyon para tao ay makapasok. Hanggang ngayon, marami pa rin po na hindi nakakapasok. Pangalawa, pagdating po sa kumpiyansa. Dahil andyan pa rin yung pangamba, sabi 87% ng Pilipino ay nangangamba na baka magka-COVID, kaya hindi po lumalabas masyado ng bahay. So itong dalawang bagay po na to, kailangan po matawid natin para 2.2 ay wag ho lumala.
What does it take to gain that confidence, Mr. Speaker?
Hindi po ako health expert, Your Honor. Pero we need to control the virus. Because that's the only way. We need to flatten the curve. We need to essentially, hanggang ngayon, kamot ulo pa ako kung bakit hindi pa yung nagpa-flatten. Kasi tumambling na tayo ng tumambling. Pwede kong isa-isayin yung mga sa tingin ko kung ano yung mali, pero hindi na panahon para doon. Ang sinasabi ko lang, gawin na lang po natin, pagkaisa natin, dahil para sa kabutihan naman ng lahat, na may panumbalik natin yung kumpiyansa. Confidence in health leads to confidence in consumption. Confidence in consumption leads to confidence in business. And confidence in business leads to confidence in investments. So what we totally lack is confidence in health. In health.
Thank you for your confident answer, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. And I think you now live up to the expectation of this hall. Earlier, you were referred to as the brilliant resident economist of the Philippine Congress. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, as we have said, the main thrust of the budget is to contain and mitigate the effects of pandemic. Would you be kindly enough to identify budget allocations for heavily affected sectors and areas that will have the highest fiscal multiplier effects? Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. And if I may continue, what are the relevant COVID-specific programs, activities, and projects in the budget? For example, health, livelihood, social protection, and critical infrastructure.
Para sa akin, number one is agriculture.
Agriculture.
Number 2 is digital,
which is
digital economy. Tanong ko kasi masyado namimili sa SM eh. Shopee na lang sila. Tapos, pangatlo, siguro, infrastruktura. Dahil po, aangat ng 55% ang ating infrastructure budget next year. So, yun po yung tatlo.
Sa agrikultura po, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, as you know, during the budget deliberation of that agency, some fundamental questions were not properly and intelligently answered. For example, they were unable to explain the relations between the farm gate or the price of palay and the price of milled rice. Because we were able to show that the palay price is only 12 pesos per kilo, and by rule of thumb, it should be multiplied by 2. So the milled rice should be able to raise a price of only 24 plus a profit margin of, let's say, 1 or 2 pesos. Therefore, the price of rice, the milled rice, should be at least 26 or 25 pesos to be afforded by the consumers. But today, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, the price is ranging from 36 to about 45 pesos. So that was not ably explained by the Department of Agriculture. That also goes with the broiler, Mr. Speaker. The price of the broiler, the farm price, gate price is only 60 pesos. Again, the rule of thumb is to just add that by 50 pesos. That's easily 110 pesos. But you know the price of the broiler today when purchased in our marketplace, it's anywhere between 200 to 250 pesos. And you are correct, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Agriculture is very important considering that our country is an agricultural economy. I hope the budget should be able to address that in order for agriculture to be able to play a significant role as a backbone of the economy. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, the country is far worse in economic position than the rest of the ASEAN countries. Our fiscal stimulus response is one among the lowest in the region. In a situation where millions continue to lose jobs and fall into poverty, swift and substantial fiscal intervention is needed. I hope you can easily agree with me, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Thank you, even if you just nodded. Even when we are at worst economic crisis in recent history, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, economic management seems to be holding off on unleashing the fiscal stimulus, I would say bazooka. Specifically, the Department of Finance is more concerned about keeping the deficit spending below 10% of GDP than the size of the stimulus package. Mr. Speaker, in your opinion, Mr. Sponsor, will this be the right strategy to bring back confidence in the system, as you were earlier articulating the importance of confidence in our economic system? Do you think government must conserve its fiscal stamina for the long and difficult recovery, or do we need to spend big today and prevent a larger contraction in the immediate future? I know this is a very hard and difficult question to answer, but considering the brilliant president economists of the House, I think what you will say will probably give even a sigh of relief to most of us. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Mahabang away na po eh. Mula nung inassign tayo nung dating speaker na mamuno ng economic stimulus cluster na tayo, ang House, nanindigan ng halos 1.4 trillion na isang biglaan na pagsugpo. Dahil kung isipin niyo po, pag dumungaw ka dun sa kondo ko, andun pa naman yung SM, andun pa naman yung headquarter ni Ramon Ang, ikot-ikot pa rin naman po yung ibang jeep. Sabi ko, ang nawala lang ay nung panahon na yon, 3 buwan kung saan pinagbawalan natin ang mga tao magtrabaho, pinagbawalan natin ang mga non-essential services na pumasok o tumigil. So, para bang gumawa tayo ng napakalaki at hanggang ngayon nga po nararamdaman, we carve a big hole na which we wanted to fill up, especially that this hole is composed mostly of SMEs, which account for 13% of GDP but 60% of total employment. So if you read the proposal of the House, it takes that position of, but it is a judgment call that if things get protracted, that yung ating pong good financial standing sa buong mundo ay pwede pa rin natin gamitin. Ang argumento ko noon, aanin mo ang pagiging white swan. Lahat ng nasa lake ay ugly duckling. Sa makatuwid, ang sabi ko noon, gastusan na natin, pawalan natin yung napakalampong butas simula Marso, Abril, Mayo, Hunyo, Hulyo, Agosto. Hanggang ngayon. Subalit, kung the position of the executive was, let's keep our powder dry, ang ibig sabihin, baka mahabang laban to, at nakikinita naman natin sa ibang bansa, tulad ng Europa, na marami po nagkakaroon ng second wave. Pero pag tinignan naman yung Estados Unidos, halos aabot na sila ng 9 trillion o kalahati ng kanilang GDP, talagang ginamit na po ng kanilang financial resources, dahil nga po sila ay dollar of they're po ang currency of first reserve. So we don't yet have that Pero in our limited means, ang masasabi ko po na yung Bayanihan 2 o yung Arise would have prevented us from falling below 2.2. Pero we're way past the bridge. It's October. Ang pananaw ko po na mas gusto kong tingnan po yung mga meso factors, economics, like transportation, certain sectors that can drive economic growth, na pwede po natin gamitin para po punuan yung napakalaking kuweba o napakalaking butas na ginawa po ng ating pong patakaran para po hindi dumami ang COVID sa Pilipinas. Pero kung ako tatanungin niyo po, kailangan po talagang ayusin natin ang health. Kasi po, wala hong mangyayari kahit paliparan, kahit po magkaroon ko ng helicopter drop ng pesos sa buong tondo. itatago lang nila ang pera kung hindi sila sigurado na bukas may trabaho sila. Hindi sila makasiguro may trabaho sila kung walang negosyo. Walang negosyo, walang income dahil wala pong health. So, balik po tayo. The principal means to restore any sense of normalcy or return to the trajectory of growth of the Philippines resides plainly and mainly on our ability to control COVID.
Salamat po sa nakapagbibigay ng iba yung pag-asa na sagot po ninyo sa katanungang iyon. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, 4.5 trillion pesos. By rule of thumb, mga ilan pong mahihirap ang pwede nating mapagraduate sa halagang iyon, Mr. Speaker.
$44 million, assuming it's a community college.
Nasa sa inyo po yun kasi kayo po ay economist at ako naman po ay I will honor your words, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
44 million.
Yes.
Kung ang paggasta po ay talagang ibabase sa isang tapat na implementation, matatarget ang sektor na kung saan talaga dapat gastahin ang pera na yon, mas or menos, and at the very least, 44 million Filipinos ang maliliberate po natin sa poverty. Yun po ang ating ibig sabihin, Mr. Speaker.
Opo.
Salamat po.
Pero mag-ano kagad ako dahil may mga mandatory expenditure katulad ng PS, katulad po ng IRA, katulad po ng debt repayments. Pag tinanggal mo yon, ang ating po talagang discretionary funds,
Kaya ko po naitanong yun, Sir Speaker, Your Honor, dahil alam po natin, until 2021, talaga pong darami yung ating mga walang trabaho dahil nga sa COVID-19. And its impact in the economy could lead to at least 1.5 million Filipinos becoming poor according to the PIDS. Ito po yung Philippine Institute of Development Studies. Without the government's social protection programs in place, such as emergency subsidy, to small business wages subsidies and projected increase of poor Filipinos, lalo po sigurong tataas yung ating unemployment. Kaya po, Mr. Speaker, yung funding allocations for implementation of its social amelioration, mga programa for 2021 may not be enough to financially assist the workers in both formal and informal sectors adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Kung bibigyan po natin ng halimbawa, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, ito pong 2021 budget ng DOLE subsidy program ng tupad, ang pondo po ay 9.9 billion. And the program aims to extend assistance to unemployed Filipinos, which as of July 2020 numbered to about 4.6 million based on the labor force survey. Under the program, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, each beneficiary will be given 5,000 pesos. A rough estimate will show that 9.9 billion allocation can only serve 2 million workers. So, sa tingin ko po yung inapprove ng DBM was grossly insufficient. Will that be a correct assessment, Mr. Speaker?
I certainly would agree with you that we could have provided more.
Thank you. The 2020 health spending, including allotments under Bayanihan 1 and 2, totaled 181 billion. The proposed 2021 health budget is down by 50 billion at only 131 billion. Yung current budget po, Mr. Speaker, ng DSWD, including Bayanihan 1 and 2 also, total 381.4 billion. And under the proposed 2021 budget, the DSWD will get only 170 billion. So wipe out clean for the 2021 budget is the current 197 billion budget for SAP. Only the so-called 4Ps or Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program and the pension for indigent and senior citizens will remain. This will be so, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. The current budget for the Department of Public Works and Highways, including money allocated under the Bayanihan 1 and 2, totaled 441.8 billion. Next year po, it will be 666.4 billion. By rule of thumb, Sir Speaker, Your Honor, ito pong 666.4 billion, ilang pong trabaho ang magge-generate dito?
On the social side or the infra side? 655 billion are all the social?
666.4 billion.
For social?
Yes.
They tend to not create new jobs
Yes.
because it is essentially
Mga ilan po kaya? By rule of thumb.
their welfare, preventing them from, falling below the poverty line. They don't tend to create. The thing that creates jobs in our budget is infrastructure.
So what does that mean, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor?
Meron kasi yung malaking budget tayo, nilalaan natin yung budget sa economic service, social services. Dahil hindi naman kakayanin ng buong ekonomiya, makapag-create ka agad ng trabaho, para lahat po yung pool ng mga mahihirap, makapagtrabaho. So, hindi naman pwede natin antayin na mamatay sila sa gutom. So, ginagawa po natin ang budget ay binabalansin natin na meron tayong binibigay, nilalaan para po sila ay masuportahan. Bawa po nga itong mga 4Ps. So, di ko pa alam kung gaano kalaki, pero ang so, kung akin pong very limited, Your Honor. I would say for 655 is just to save them from dying of hunger.
Salamat po sa pag-aatubili, pero mahirap po talaga. Pero naasahan po natin na sana itong pondong ito ay kahit papano ay pagmumulan ng napakaraming trabaho, lalong-lalo na po dun sa bracket po talaga ng nangangailangan ng trabaho, sapagkat dito lang po magmumula ang talagang ikinabubuhay nila. Nasa huli na po akong pagtatanong, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor. Ang proposed budget po ng DPWH for next year ay 469 billion. Dito ay mga lump sum. Siguro po magkaroon ng consistency rito, yung budget transparency and accountability. Napakalaking halaga po kasi ito kung ito ay will not be broken into manageable parts, consistent with accountability and the expectation of people that each and every centavo itemized or expense should at least be worthwhile and should be beneficial to each and every Filipino. Gusto po kasi nila kahit papano in the future, makakita lang sila ng tinatawag nating silver lining. The light at the end of the tunnel. Hindi po yung headlamp ng isang coming train. Kailangan po ma-break up, maipatupad yung budget po ng masinop. Let us avoid yung mga rent-seeking policies, lag-rolling policies. We should probably approach each item like they are public goods para maipatupad po siguro ang isang equitable budget for every citizen of this republic. Salamat po, Speaker. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Sponsor.
Sa'yo lang ako natakot eh. Pero maraming salamat.